All right, hello everyone. It's been a while since we've published anything or released anything, and this time we've got a great announcement. And I've got Shane with me here, and I'll walk you through who he is and what this is all about. The exciting announcement is that TokenomicsDAO is going to partner up with Forgd. In this case, Forgd has acquired TokenomicsDAO, and the reason for that is really that we think that we together can achieve a much greater goal. And by that, we're consolidating our offerings into one single platform, and we're targeting at this goal of providing this end-to-end holistic process in optimizing the token and protocol performance, right? So I guess historically, we at TokenomicsDAO, we've really captured and really focused on all of the stuff regarding tokenomics. So anything that starts from, we will help a protocol to design the whole thing, and we focused on educational content, tooling, and later on also services and products. And a problem that we always have, and that was kind of my motivation for joining forces with Forgd and collaborating with Shane and benefiting from all his experience in that field, is that we do this, and you don't do this in this isolated process, right? And Shane, you definitely know this very well, right? Because you've seen the other side of the game. You kind of design a token, but that's not it. You have to bring it out to market. You have to get it launched. You have to deal with market makers and get it listed. And oftentimes, if you do this in isolation, the parts get missing in between, because someone who's going through the process will have to switch between different tools, different products, different service providers, and it's just not it's not a nice journey for clients. And so we got this feedback a lot, and this was always sort of on my bucket list of do and achieve and get to. And so yeah, I'm super excited that we can now do this all in one, right? Because really we were this one part of the puzzle, and I feel like what we have now with Forgd and TokenomicsDAO is like the full suite of things that we need for this. And I'm happy to, say that we're going to bring in the whole community. The community is going to stay around, the TokenomicsDAO community. I think we're going to be able to wrap this all up into a really nice, coherent system that allows for, really helping you guys designing tokens and optimizing your token performance after you've done that. So Shane, do you maybe want to give like a really quick intro and then talk about sort of your motivation for doing this and share some insights? And then I guess what we'll do next is hop into the products, right? Because we talked about sort of that we're consolidating the service offering and the product offering into a single toolkit, and then we'll just walk through a couple of these. That's my plan for this.
Sure. Yeah. So honestly, it's great to be here. Really excited to be connected with the TokenomicsDAO community. I guess a little bit about my background. So I've been working professionally in crypto for about 9 years now. It's mostly on the capital markets side of things. So mostly infrastructure, trading at centralized exchanges and market making desks. So started back in 2015. I was part of the core founding team at Gemini, working alongside the Winklevoss twins. So really good sort of like Wall Street side of crypto. Around 2017, I started participating in ICO syndicate investments, which ultimately led me to move to China, where I joined FBG Capital, which is a large Web3 hedge fund, very active altcoin trader in Southeast Asian markets, and rose through the ranks and eventually took over their entire market making operation and led a pretty sizable team. And at our peak, we were one of the largest market-making institutions in the Web3 space. After FBG, I transitioned back to the US and joined a portfolio company, centralized exchange, formerly known as BitMax, which eventually rebranded to Ascendex, and started in business development, did a big fundraise, and ultimately the board asked me to take over as CEO. So operated as CEO for a few years until early 2023 where I was sort of ready for the next chapter. Wasn't quite sure what that next chapter was going to be, but I knew that I really, really enjoyed working with early stage projects. I had a ton of experience doing that from the perspective of an exchange operator and from the perspective of being a market maker. I also did certain angel investments, and I have a sizable portfolio of projects that I work with. And the motivation for creating Forged came from the sense that when I spoke with projects, I found myself responding to a lot of similar questions about how to go to market in a strategic and intelligent manner. And I sort of formulated this blueprint of what is the right way to work with market makers and create balanced relationships so that expected value is still positive for the market maker, otherwise they wouldn't engage in the relationship, but also it wasn't predatory or parasitic, that the project was still maximizing value and creating a fair, balanced relationship. From the perspective of centralized exchanges, there are a lot of predatory practices, and I give advice to project founders on how to effectively navigate these predatory practices and, again, create balanced relationships to maximize value for both parties. I became pretty apt at bringing projects to market, but I had frustration in the sense that my advice could then only direct them to engage these disparate third parties. And I found that my subject matter expertise on tokenomics, creating sort of that foundation of protocol value flows, how value is captured, shared, and distributed among stakeholders within the network, was somewhat lacking. I had sort of the high-level quantitative perspective on how market makers or exchanges viewed tokenomics, but I didn't really have the deep subject matter expertise that I felt I needed in order to create kind of a holistic offering. So when I went to the drawing board on creating Forged, I knew this vision was to create a holistic end-to-end platform, a suite of software tools where anyone could access the products that they needed in order to launch, scale, and operate a protocol. And I've joked about this with you before, but I was actually in the process of writing educational guides related to tokenomics, and I stumbled across your Substack. And as I started reading, I found myself just very, very enthralled. It was like, okay, I'm learning new things myself. I need to add this to kind of my arsenal of tools. And as I went down the rabbit hole and eventually found myself in the tokenomics design space, that's when it sort of hit me that I knew I needed to partner with you. So if you remember, I think it was last July, I sent you a very long LinkedIn message, something to the tune of, I know this is a random
Discord,
outreach.
LinkedIn, and yeah.
A random outreach, but I would love to have a phone conversation with you. And I remember those first few phone conversations were like 2.5 hours where we were just talking about our visions. And it might have been after the third phone conversation where I think we both said nearly the same time was, we need to be flying the same flag. So, how do we do that? And so I'm really, really excited about what we're building, with just going live with MVP offerings. I feel like it is truly the first holistic end-to-end toolkit where, someone can do everything from designing tokenomics and protocol value flows while learning along the way. They can engage market makers in an automated capacity. They can work with us to list on centralized and decentralized exchanges and design listing plans. We can conduct growth capital workshops. After the launch occurs, you can utilize us for monitoring your market makers' performance, keeping them accountable. And that's just the start. I think ultimately you and I kind of share this vision that we can do it better than, some of the consultants, the advisors out there that maybe have a tendency to be predatory. We owe it to the community to give them this holistic toolkit to put themselves in the best position to succeed. So, yeah, I know that was kind of an earful, but
no, it's necessary. And I think the most important piece, and I think we're super aligned on that, is the educational aspect. When we were working on consolidating these service offerings, a lot of times we were both taking a step back and seeing like, okay, what do we actually want to achieve? We want to take this from an educational perspective. We want to really continue to do that, and we make sure that everybody's who wants to go through this process can do that completely on his own, right? We've got this fully written out, detailed educational guide on how to take an idea all the way through a token design, through launching it, through engaging with market makers and listing on a centralized exchange, right? And I think that's a pretty cool thing that I haven't seen anywhere else in this depth, right? Especially that end to end, that you find that in one space. There's definitely experts in every niche, but no one kind of does it in that combined way.
Yeah, and I think more than that, it's like oftentimes when I find myself like reading through an educational guide, like it was just the other day, A16Z released a series of guides on like how to list a token, how to launch a token. And what I find is that it's sort of like, it's high level, superficial advice of like, always strive for decentralization. Look to, go live with, a meaningful percentage of your circulating supply in the hands of community. And it's like, okay, like I think a lot of us have heard that sort of, high level advice, but how do I navigate the nuances? And I think that's what everyone's looking for. They're looking for that blueprint of saying like, what is the process for actually taking my core Web 2 business and introducing a token, right? And that's kind of what we've always strived to do, is saying like, as a Web 3 company that's issuing a token, you are, you're not allowed to neglect traditional business model practices. You need to have a means to monetize. And tokenomics is more than just saying like, here's the pie, how do I divvy it up? And over what period of time our token's gonna unlock? It's understanding what value you're providing for a target demographic. How are you going to capture that value? Now, how are you going to accrue that value back to key stakeholders within the ecosystem through novel demand drivers? Now let's categorize those demand drivers. And let's model things out and actually compare them to your supply using your valuation. And let's iterate on the process until we find a design that fits. Great, we've got that in place. What's the next step? What does it look like to engage market makers? How do we parlay that into listing on exchanges? What does the launch mechanism actually look like, whether you're doing a centralized or decentralized? So I feel like that's what projects need, is they need someone or a team that's done this before many, many times, so that when they do it, they only get one shot at this. They're not falling into common pitfalls that can be predatory, costly, and really expensive in terms of like bandwidth drain. Because I think ultimately like what they need to be doing is putting their heads down and ship good product, novel protocol, strong fundamentals. Like they shouldn't have to navigate all the, let's call it the capital market side of things of Web3 single-handedly.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, and I think that's what we're really addressing. Shall we maybe go through a couple of these products and see how they can really help with that, and how we've consolidated them? I think that'd be super valuable for the community and everyone else that's kind of new to this, right? Because we're bringing like two parts together. There'll be people that don't know TokenomicsDAO, that only know Forged, and the other way around, right? So I guess to start with, I think all of what you said, we've put into joint knowledge, right? Apart from the educational guides that we have coming out of the tokenomics design space, we've put that all into something called the Pathfinder. And that's really this, I don't know, I think it's like 150 pages or so by now, Gitbook-like format where, you'll just start at point one, and we'll talk about really the things that you said, right? Your business model, how do you make money? And you'd be surprised on like how many people haven't thought about that, right? They just have their pie chart and emissions. And the first question I always ask is like, who's going to buy your token? And then I get blank stares. I'm like, We haven't thought about that. Like, wouldn't that be speculation? Yeah, of course it's speculation, but that's only a part, and potentially you can think about other ways that you want to have like a more strategic or planned approach, right? And so the Pathfinder, that's what that is, right? It's sort of the guides that we have, and then combined everything on your knowledge on how to navigate stuff that happens after the token has been designed. So that's pretty cool, I think, having this extensive knowledge base. Yeah.
No, I think
that's out there.
I think it's great, and again, I think it's like a very like action-oriented guide. It's like this isn't like an academic thesis. It's actually like how do I take this raw concept and now actually put it into practice and start building my tokenomics. And I think that parlays nicely into Token Designer. So, I like to think Token Designer as sort of the spiritual successor to the tokenomics design space. That's really the motivation. And, then sprinkling in some more quantitative modeling in order to actually visualize how your supply and your demand actually manifest and then result in token price performance post TGE. So in a nutshell, Token Designer is giving you front-end tools to create your token distribution schedule. So you've got a pie, it's out of the oven. How are you going to divvy up the slices amongst stakeholders within the network, internal and external allocations? Next, you can use front-end tools to customize and manipulate the emission schedule. So over what period of time does each stakeholder get their piece of pie? Then you move on to demand drivers, and you're working through various types of utilities, mechanisms, and then you're estimating that demand through really intuitive tools such as running a bottoms-up analysis on how much revenue you expect to generate and how you can accrue that back to token buybacks or through staking with real yield. Also quantifying things like governance. So at the end of that modeling phase, you've got a really comprehensive breakdown of your supply side from your token emissions, and then your demand drivers and how those scale over time. Then this product grows. It allows you to ascribe a valuation, an FDV, using comparables. All throughout this process, we've got a database of something like 150 to 200 projects that if you don't want to design it from scratch, you can just leverage a template of, hey, I really like how Jitto Labs went to market. Like, let me just emulate them. Or, hey, hot new DPIN projects that I'm interested in, emulating the design of. So they're easy to use. And what I think is coolest about the Token Designer is that, after you take an initial stab at everything, we run out quantitative models and we say, with this supply and with this demand and with this valuation, let's actually see what life looks like after UTGE. So we run what we call price discovery simulations, and we see what is the net impact as supply intersects with demand. If demand greater than supply, then there's going to be net new buyers. And we run these simulations on the back end of introducing those net new buyers and simulating a trade, executing against modeled liquidity from comparable projects, seeing how that influences the price, taking that net new price and rolling it into the next day, so on and so forth. So it's obviously not a crystal ball. No one can predict with absolute certainty on how a token is going to perform post TGE. But again, it's all about educating. That out. Eventually, one day.
Yeah.
But comes back to this idea of educating projects and helping them avoid common pitfalls like low float, high FDV, understanding launch mechanisms on centralized exchanges and how those influence volatility in the first day after listing, so that you can optimize your tokenomics and feel very confident as you transition into the next stages of the go-to-market strategy.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I want to kind of get back to is what you said, right? That it's practical. It's not this thing that you do once and then you're sort of done with. It's this, you you see this, like if you envision the tool, right? You jump into the tool and you have like this slide in. You see the guide. You can read through how stuff works, and then you can make the adjustments in the tool. And then you can always jump around between the different screens for it, right? So you can jump into how supply and demand compare to each other over time, and how your latest adjustment that you just made to the emission schedule or to your demand drivers, how that has now impacted this this chart or this overview, right? And ultimately, you can also look at the price and how that goes. And so you're like, it enables people to really quickly iterate on this, even though they don't have any expansive knowledge. And this has been something like I've been like so focused on over the last years. Because I remember when I started, the only way was like this complicated Python library um, that everybody kind of referred to. And so, like, who knows how to code Python, right? Like, and who knows how to even start with that? So that was all people had. So it was, yeah, everybody was kind of left there. But and now we have this visual thing where you can input some things and you see some nice outputs, and it might not be as good as or as detailed as a machinations or that we now have, or like the Python library itself, but it gets you to that like 99% of, you know, removing these unknowns and giving you an idea of where you're heading with your project. And I think like that's so super powerful. And on top of that, it's not, so maybe just a bit of background on that, right? So the first time we did the spreadsheet, and Shane is like an absolute master in spreadsheets. We did this first spreadsheet for, that we had in TokenomicsDAO. And then in, I think like November or so, we started building this new spreadsheet. And initially it was really cool. We had a lot of stuff in there. And then I think like over time, we just built in too many features and functionalities and referencing loops and stuff. And so the last 2 months or so when we were working with clients, it was always like you change your parameter and then the Google Sheet started to think for like 10, 15, 20 seconds. And you have this awkward moment where you're like video calling with someone and you're let's just adjust your unlock period to 12 months. Okay, let's wait for 12 seconds, 15
Make
seconds, see
talk.
when the chart updates, right? So yeah, I think that's a big improvement now. The thing is like nice and fast, and you can really iterate through this really quickly.
Yeah. Last thing that I'll say about it that I love and I think clients are super excited about is after you're done with everything, you can just click a single button and go ahead and publish a one-pager. And the one-pager is, I truly think that it's going to be the new version of the white paper. You know, the white paper evolved into the Git book, and the Git book is now really just distilled down to like a couple key facts, at least in my experience. And so, you know, we're allowing projects to go through this entire process and then publish this one pager for their community, maybe for prospective investors or strategic partners. And, you know, it's got everything that you need to know. It's what's your elevator pitch, problem solution, mission vision, business model, value creation, value capture, detailed breakdown of your supply side, so your pie chart, your emissions curve, then your demand drivers, and then key facts and figures about your project. And it really streamlines the process, and I think it's a hell of a lot more convenient than putting together your own spreadsheet and trying to share that with externals. So I'm very excited about that.
And I guess like it fits into the whole process, right? So we look back at the process that you've initially outlined. It's sort of this, you do your tokenomics first, and once you sign them off and you're happy with them, that's what you go and take to market makers and centralized exchanges, right? So if this is presented in a really nice and clear way, that I would say increases your chances of getting a really good deal, right?
Yeah. I mean, it shows them that you've done the work. That's like a huge point of feedback that I've often gotten from strategic partners, market makers, centralized exchanges, or prospective investors. They don't like it when someone comes to them and sort of wants to take advantage of their subject matter expertise when that ask is outside of their core business. You know, a market maker, what is their primary duty? It's to support liquidity for your native token, post TGE. They don't necessarily like allocating bandwidth to help you optimize your tokenomics. If you say, hey, here's my pie chart, here's my emissions curve, I'm sending you a PDF. It's something that I think makes sense, but you tell me. Now, they have to now convert that over to a model, actually run the simulations themselves, and it's not a good first impression, and it puts you in a position to not really have a great relationship, because you should respect one another's areas of subject matter expertise. And if you're about to go public, I think it helps to show that you've been super thoughtful about this, right? You've run through the mental models and simulations. You've arrived at a valuation and an emissions curve that really makes sense because you can outpace it with your demand drivers. You understand your core business. You're really ready for prime time. You're not treating this as something like, well, I hope to issue a token with the hopes that people will buy it in a speculative capacity because it's a bull market, but can't really tell you much else about the project. So again, I think it helps that you have to put in the work and you've been educated along the way and you have a really high quality deliverable to show for it.
Yeah. It's definitely something that is very much needed. I've seen too many pitch decks with no or very terrible representation of tokenomics. So
exactly,
that's that'll be cool if everyone used that. Okay, so now that we've designed a token and we've gone about doing all these other things, talking to market makers, I guess another product that we have in line is auto distribution. And that's something that, will allow you, once you have your token launched and your smart contracts ready, you can set up to distribute and automatically vest to different parties and groups over time, right? So that's a super useful feature, and you can use that all from that one platform. So you've designed it all, the token is there, now just set it up, right? And so if your investors, advisors, whoever want to claim their token, just come to our portal and do it right there. So that's another really cool piece of the puzzle, I guess, that fits into this.
Yeah, and I think it just makes the tokenomics a little bit more real, right? You've got this blueprint, and now you want to vest out over time to your advisors, your investors, or your core contributors, your main team. Right? We deploy that smart contract for you. You just deposit the assets to that smart contract. It automates the vesting. Right? You've already laid out the blueprint, so we just follow that blueprint, and now you've got this dashboard where you can monitor the vesting process across various individual groups, and then you can monitor the claim process across each individual stakeholder and see vested versus claimed assets. And I think there are a lot of valuable insights from that. You understand the cost basis of investors, you understand your prevailing market price. If there's a large delta between that, if someone's bought on the cheap and your token is performing very well and they're claiming a lot of tokens, they may sell. So you may want to prepare yourself for a lot of sell pressure. I think that there's much more that we can and will do with auto distribution. But for now, it was sort of our initial way of saying, like, great, let's take this blueprint and make it a reality for you. So I think it's a great synergistic offering to Token Designer.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Okay. That's definitely a cool one. I think like the concept is simple. Everybody gets that. So one thing you first told me about when we had our first conversations, you kind of already had that, because that's very much in your area of expertise, is AMM squared. Walk us through how that works and what that is about, because I find this like really cool when I first heard about it, and I still think it's a really cool product. So so tell us about that.
AMM squared is I think it's really the first of its kind. It's a self-service, non-custodial market-making protocol that can allow you to manage liquidity for your native token across both centralized and decentralized exchanges in a fully automated capacity. So we call it AMM squared because I like to think that it's the advanced version of automated market making, something that works across multiple platforms and not just AMMs with an AMM protocol. So you can do DEXs, centralized exchanges, and monitor it all from a centralized dashboard. And it's entirely free to use. So this is a great tool for someone that, may not have the capital or may not want to work with a professional market maker. You can just act as your own market maker. And basically what you do is you come to our dashboard, you pick one of our pre-configured strategies. We have 4 to start, very basic, delta neutral. I just want to provide evergreen liquidity. Or you can do really cool ones called like tunnel, which is, well, I only have tokens. And as I sell those tokens, I want to layer on bid side liquidity, a willingness to buy. Or replication strategy. I want to replicate the liquidity from a DEX to a centralized exchange. You pick one of these strategies, you pick a budget that you're willing to allocate of stable coins and tokens. You connect your wallets or feed API keys from centralized exchange accounts, deposit the assets, and click go. And just like that, you've got very advanced and sophisticated strategies that are operating across multiple venues, and you can consolidate and visualize your contributions to liquidity relative to the market, your contributions to volume relative to the market. You can manage your P&L. You do a lot of really cool things on this platform. The motivation for building this was, I really liked what Hummingbot was doing with sort of like decentralized market making. The one thing I didn't love about Hummingbot was that you had to operate through a command line interface. And so I wanted to make that more accessible and bring it to a front end. So, to build this, we partnered with one of the top market makers in the space. We have an exclusive license to their trading technology, which sort of powers the back end. And I think it's turned into a really, really elegant user experience. And again, I don't know anywhere else in the world where you can find a non-custodial, self-service market-making protocol that runs these advanced strategies, and it's all for free. So I'm really pumped about that. I think that it's going to be super, super popular, especially amongst some of the smaller scale projects that maybe haven't raised a ton of capital. So they're looking to bootstrap this sort of effort themselves.
Yeah, I think you'll find a lot of these in the TokenomicsDAO community, right? Because those are the ones where, like, oftentimes we see these protocols. They'll rock up somewhere in the chat. They'll find our tokenomics design framework or hit up to tokenomics design space. So they've already been trying to DIY all of this, and so having something for them that they can use later on in the process, I think is really, really cool. Another really, really cool kind of offering I think we have, and that's then accompanied by business intelligence, where like the name implies, you can kind of monitor how everything's going with your token and on the market in general, right? So that's more geared or targeted towards everything that's post TGE. So once you've launched your token, that's where people can hit. And I think like directionally, that's where we have a ton of different ideas that we want to work on, and something that we're already working on right now to really improve with these areas.
Yeah, I think business intelligence is a cool little niche offering, because like right now you've got immensely popular platforms, a CoinMarketCap, a CoinGecko, then your Masaris, your token terminals, DeFi Llama, and even like Dune Analytics dashboards, which I think those are all great. I think, at least in my experience, they are more retail researcher centric. I haven't really come across a good platform that's like business intelligence as the token issuer. Like, I really only care about me, at least when it comes down to the granular minutia. Like, I want to see how my price performance over time is correlated with historical evolution or deterioration of my liquidity environments. And like, believe it or not many of these platforms show historical liquidity. right? So like that's something that we show. Same thing with like top of book spread. Like that really matters in terms of user experience, how much slippage that they're inducing for a small scale trade. So to show a historical bid-ask spread over time, how that evolves with volume and segmentation of volume over time across various exchanges. So it's a great starting point, and I think it allows us to build a lot of unique products on top of it. But even just the bare bones, it's a really great way to monitor your performance after you've listed, because as an operator, the token issuing entity, I think you owe it to the community to always keep a very keen eye on how the secondary market is evolving. Because if you neglect the token, the secondary market, the liquidity, you're offering hollow incentives as part of the tokenomics that you've so meticulously designed pre-TGE. So you don't get to take your foot off the gas post-TGE.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people think that. And I'd even say like, even in terms of tokenomics, you're not done after TGE. And we see that again and again, protocols reaching out and saying like, we're not happy with this or with that or with this or with that. And they then want to go and figure out what to change, implementing new mechanism or using some of the reserves that they have and issue them into something that gives them the best benefit in whatever form they're looking for, right? So it's definitely not over after TGE, any of this. And I think like that's where I see like that for me is like the biggest area of opportunity, because there's certainly a lot of people that can help you. Like I said, right, like that can help you all the way from designing your token to launching it. There's many different, although they're just disparate sort of service providers here, you get that. But post TGE, I haven't seen that much really helping you navigating your tokenomics, like you said, your token performance or your liquidity. And so that's kind of what I'm most excited about, like figuring out how we can help people in the community and projects in that area.
Yeah, like,
and
you and I talk quite a bit about like what is the core thesis that drives like day-to-day operations. And I think that we both recognize what we go to market with Forged, and the partnership with TokenomicsDAO to create this one holistic platform. It's our MVP, it's our minimum viable product. The goal is to be as self-service as possible, plug and play without having to interact with anyone. However, I think that we both acknowledge, the limitations is that, we wanted to get to market quickly and provide immense value to projects. There's still gaps where, you and I both spend a lot of time interacting with projects as more consultants and subject matter experts and walking them through things. But the ultimate priority is that we learn from those engagements and we think creatively about how to create new, innovative, and unique products to make something more self-service. Because consulting in and of itself is inherently not scalable. There's only one Shane, there's only one Florian. Thankfully, we have the Tokenomics DAO, and I think that we're going to be getting core contributors involved more and more in some of these engagements. But ultimately, we want to brainstorm together and create these really cool, unique, revolutionary products so that any project that's post-TGE that maybe wants to submit a change request but doesn't know how they want to adjust their tokenomics can sort of plug and play, model out the impact of a new demand driver, or improving liquidity through novel mechanisms, like how that's actually going to impact the bottom line. And so that's sort of like the next frontier, if you will, that I'm also very, very excited to explore.
Yeah, definitely something I've heard a lot in the community, voiced a lot in the community. So yeah, definitely need to solve that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess last one. This isn't finished yet. Let's tease this out a little bit. A problem I wasn't even aware of, I guess. So this is really, again, something coming out of your area of expertise, right? Is that many projects can't really monitor or figure out if the liquidity with market makers that they are signing contracts or that they have engaged to provide liquidity, if they're actually trading based on the terms that they had agreed on, right? And so that's a big problem, and that's something we're currently working on to solve and sort of weave into this suite of tools, right? We've got the business intelligence; it's kind of close to that in a certain way. We've got the automated market maker, which not necessarily overlaps, but goes in a similar direction. And so, yeah, that's another cool thing I think that we'll be able to offer shortly.
Yeah, I mean it's shocking because market makers, they're some of the largest institutions in Web3. I'd say 90% of projects that conduct a TGE have to work with a market maker in some capacity. And there's a large pool of players, but I think some dominant ones that have kind of a really good grasp on the market. And for the avoidance of doubt, like I do firmly believe that market making is an essential business for projects to work with. You need to support liquidity once you transition to the secondary market after you TGE. But I firmly believe that there should be more balanced and transparent relationships between market makers and projects. And the current state of things is, I would say, probably about 25% of market makers provide some transparency and insight to projects about their trade activity. The other 75%, it's more of a trust us, which is absurd when you think about it, because these are very costly engagements. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, significant percentage of the token distribution schedule. So shouldn't you have some transparency? Shouldn't there be some accountability? Surprisingly, very little. And so what we've done is we've started this new project called the Liquidity Transparency Initiative. And it's all about giving more insights and data back to the project so that they can monitor the performance of their market makers, ensure that they're adhering to contractual obligations. But further than that, it's not just about like identifying who's doing their job and who's not. It's about measuring the impact of one or multiple market makers relative to the organic marketplace activity, and then segmenting that in really innovative ways. So for example, of trade volume, well, you should be able to identify the disposition of trade volume. Is trade volume being conducted as a maker, a liquidity provider, or as a taker, someone that removes liquidity with immediacy? Not all volume is equal. So this tool allows you to segment, what your market makers are doing relative to the market. Same thing with liquidity provision. What does the top of book spread look like? What does liquidity inside plus or minus 50 basis points, 100 basis points, 200 basis points look like? How does your order book evolve over time? How does that change and vary by exchange, centralized versus decentralized? So there are tons of insights that projects don't have right now that we're going to start offering to them. And it's all about creating a more balanced relationship. Again, I think market makers, fill a very essential role within the ecosystem. And I think most of the market makers that we're partnering with are really, really excited about this initiative because they're thrilled to be able to sort of stand behind their trade activity because they are providing immense value to projects. I think what I'm really excited about this initiative is that it will empower projects at a future date to make more data-driven decisions about who they partner with. Because the current state of the market, when assessing which market maker to work with, is gut instinct and anecdotal evidence. And for such a quantitative business model, that's such a shame that we can't leverage a massive pool of private data to determine who is the best service provider for me. And so that's what we're going to be doing with the Liquidity Transparency Initiative. It all starts with the ability to monitor your market makers in a dynamic capacity.
Yeah, I kind of always have to think about Google Amazon, like, all of their platforms. If you go there, they can show you like a clear history of their SLAs, what their uptime has been over time. And I feel like that's something that's not that easy to get with market makers. Sort of like, how have they been adhering to the KPIs quoted, and how's that evolved over time? So I think it's really cool that we're again, like, bringing these two puzzle pieces together, because currently it's just impossible to get a view on that. You kind of have to get the data from one end, you have to get the data from another end, and then fuse it together to be able to show that. And yeah, that's kind of what we're working on, and providing. So I'm really excited about that. It's a pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's going to be
product.
An awesome new launch in the somewhat near future.
Yeah. All right. Do we have anything else that we haven't mentioned, that we haven't talked about?
There's listing and liquidity, which for all intents and purposes is like a dynamic guide on how to list on the best exchanges and a framework to determine which exchange is best for you. I think that there's cool tools that will build on top of that. For example, I have dreams of building an AI tool that auto-populates the formal application process for centralized exchanges, which for anyone that's ever applied to centralized exchanges, and a lot of them, knows that it is a pain in the ass. A lot of lengthy questionnaires, yes. And it's quite duplicative. So I think that we have the framework in place because of Token Designer to automate that entire process, but TBD on release date there.
We've been toying with different ChatGPT models, but haven't gotten there fully. But yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. All right. Good. Let's wrap it up then. Thanks everyone for listening in and joining in. I'm super excited with these news and what is to come with Forgd. And yeah, hope you guys stay active in the community and try out some of the stuff that we talked about. It's all there. Go to forgd.com to check it out. And yeah, hope to see you soon.
And please provide constructive feedback. We're always looking for ways to improve.
Yes, please. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye.